What's up, guys? JP here. So taking a break from the Chevelle build, new video coming soon on that. We are going to be working on my personal, one of my desert toys, 98 Jeep Grand Cherokee ZJ. We got the rough country 4.5 inch long travel suspension. We have a upgraded steering dampener with heavy duty tie rods. We got heavy duty ball joints we're putting in the front. We're kind of just rebuilding the front end. Again, it's a 98 Jeep Grand Cherokee ZJ 5.2 TSI. So stay tuned and we'll kind of go through the kit. The very first step when doing this install is you want to secure your steering wheel. I just use a bungee down to the bottom of the dash just to keep it centered so it can't twist on you. Step one, according to the kit instructions, is going to be removing your upper shock bolts here in the engine bay for your front shocks. It's just going to be the bolt. I already have mine removed. So it'll be the nut, the washer, and the rubber bushing. Same thing over here. This one is particularly a little harder to get to. It is under the brake master cylinder, and you can see I already have my wrench on it down there, the little shiny chrome. So you'll do the same thing there, and that is step one. Super simple. Next step, remove your front wheels and tires. So next you want to support your axle. If you're doing it on the ground, you're going to be doing it with just the jack. You want to support it right here under the pumpkin. Obviously, I'm using a post jack for that. Then what we're going to do on the next step is we're going to come around and we're going to unbolt our front shocks completely. So we already have the fronts done, or the tops done. So now we just got to get to these two bolts here. This is the passenger side. And here, same thing, two bolts here on the driver's side. So let's go ahead and take those out. All right, so we got the shocks out. So next is going to be the sway bar end links here. We're going to take this Torx bit. It's a T55 Torx and an 18mm bolt. Here on the passenger side, that's next. All right, so sway bar end links are loose. Sway bar is loose. Next step, it says to go ahead and remove the track bar. It says frame side or axle side first with this 15mm bolt here. It's going to be the 15, and then it goes up, follow the track bar to the frame, and then you remove the 15 on this frame joint there. So one thing to note, when you do pop out this track bar, the entire axle is going to want to shift, kind of fall and shift to the left. That's why it's very important to make sure this is super secure. Mine stayed up good. It's not going to fall out because you're still connected to your upper and lower control arms here, but it does shift to the left a little bit, so be wary of that. Don't get your fingers trapped in there. Also, another thing I noticed, when we're about to lower this axle, you're going to want to take off your, if you have ABS like I do, sorry, compressor's running. So you'll want to take off your ABS lines from these little metal brackets so there's enough room to pull the springs. Just a little bit of light so we can see what we're doing. It's starting to get dark out. So just a quick update on this. Since I am going to be doing, so I bought it through Quadra-Track, but I believe it's still rough country, but I bought a heavy duty tie rods. So I got all new tie rod ends, a new heavy duty steering stabilizer strut. So since I'm doing that, which is a separate kit than the lift kit, this video is going to have a few extra things added. So I'm going to go ahead and start pulling off my steering components to move forward with that, to get them out of the way. And I am also changing my upper and lower ball joints on both sides because I have a little play. And I ended up getting Extreme Terrain Toughs, and these are pretty heavy duty. So you can see that there. So pretty heavy duty, good waterproof seals, so that'll be nice. Alright, a couple things. One, I believe mine's a snap-on, but you can get these at Harbor Freight. I know it was a time-lapse video, but these for popping any kind of tie rod end or joint off, these things work great. Just a counter torsion bar, basically. So we got all the tie rods off here. Track bars off, so all we have left is the control arms. So moving back on to the lift kit, we're going to want to take the spring perch mount holder. It's right here. As you can see, it goes over the spring, so there's one on each side. Take this off, so that way when we lower the axle, the springs will come off easy. Alright, so I know it's a little far away. See if I can get you guys a little bit closer. There we go. Alright, so I got those spring perch mounts off. So next thing we're going to do is very, very slowly, we're going to lower the axle so that the axle is hanging by the upper and lower control arms, so we can get these springs off. All right. You see here, I have a nice gap. So grab a pry bar. Pry bar sometimes helps. It should kind of flex, just like that. Go ahead and pull these bad boys out. There's one side. There she goes. Alright, there's one coil spring. We're going to move along to the next side. Let's go even lower. Slowly sags. Okay. And 2 coil springs. So the next thing they're requesting us to do is to mark the cam bolt on the lower control arms. You see my mark here, straight across here. It's a little, I do it with a punch and a hammer. Again, there's my mark there and there. You do it on both sides, passenger and driver side, front and back of the cam bolt. So that way you know where to place the cam bolt back when you put in the new lower control arms. Alright guys, so we're going to put a pause on the lift kit. I'm going to go ahead and time lapse disassemble the front axle for the upper and lower ball joint on both sides. So we'll go ahead and throw just a time-lapse video in of that, and then we'll continue on again with the lift kit. Thanks. All right. So new bowl joints are in both sides here. Just kind of an update for you guys. Just changing the seals in the front axle, and ended up having to order a whole new bearing set because these bearings are pretty pitted. Which surprisingly, I didn't have any kind of growl or whine, so the job's going to take a little longer than wanted. So that's why you guys see everything all torn apart the way it is. So parts won't be here for a few days. So I'm going to continue on with the lift kit, however. So the next step in the lift kit, we left off at marking all of our cam bolts on the lower control arm. So we're going to go ahead and get those removed. It says to keep your original mounting bolts. So we're going to keep our bolts to be reused. So, okay, so lower control arms are off. It does say the next step, for anyone doing this on the ground with jack stands, I like to work up high in the air, but it does say to remove your upper control arms from the front axle next. However, I am actually going to do those later because I am on a post jack again, so, and I'm working up in the air, so if I remove the upper, this side of the axle just wouldn't have the extra stability, so I'll do those after. So I'm going to move on to the following step, which is going to be to grind off the lower control arms original location from the frame on both sides. So we're going to grind this completely off. All right, so we're back. We got this first one cut off here. Went ahead and painted it black like it says, so that way we don't get any further rust. So that is the lower control arm mounting bracket cut off on the passenger side. We're going to go around here to the driver's side, and we are going to do the same thing to this. Just basically you're just going to follow the frame, make sure you don't cut into your frame there, and let's get this one cut out too. All right, so driver's side is done. Next we're going to move on to supporting the transmission. For me, since we're on a lift, I'm using a transmission jack supported under the transmission pan there. We're going to go ahead and remove our transmission cross member, starting with these 4 bolts here. 2, 3, 4 for the transmission mount. I'm going to take the skid plate off and then install our new cross member. All right, cross member is in. You reuse the factory transmission mount bolts. So now what we're going to do, we're going to end up drilling those 2 holes on each side, so 4 holes total, and then we'll move along to clearing out that hole so we can drop in some nuts for that to do these 4 holes. Those 2 on that side, and those 2 on that side. These are your short locking washers. Both in. You will have to put one of these in, get yourself a little small magnet, put it in, get the other one in, and then get a magnet, pull the other one down, because you can't get a second one in when one's already sticking out, so you have to kind of simultaneously do them. So now what we're going to move on to is cutting out there. We're going to do the same thing, drill these 2 holes here on both sides, and then the locking bolts with the arms will go through the hole down to each one of these. So it's the next part for the install. You're going to look for the ones, you're going to have 90-degree ones here, but you're going to look for the ones that are off at a 45 roughly. Those are going to go into, again, our freshly cut hole there, over to this hole, over to that hole. I already got mine. It's the same size hole, the 15/32. So, boom, boom. Again, through this hole here, down to each one of those. Alright, so next is going to be setting your lower front control arms to 29 5/16. The way I did this is set this in a vise, turn it, that way you have a true flat surface here, true flat surface here, and it's going to be center hole to center hole. I've already set mine, so that's the easiest way to do it. Alright, so you're going to install your lower control arms. You're going to make sure you put your factory cam bolts back in this lower control arm in the front. Make sure your marks are lined up on both the inside and outside cam. And then we're going to go ahead and remove the upper control arms and start getting those installed. Okay, so front control arms. 15 3/8 from center of the hole to center of the hole. Just for your information, looking kind of over the instructions, the Zert fitting is going to go inside facing upwards, and this L cut right here goes down towards the axle. So this is the top, this is towards the axle. All right, we got the upper control arms in. Just for your information, you're going to reuse your 50 Torx bolt. These come with the kit. And then once you're all done, you want to make sure you tighten down your lock nuts here. I think this is a 1 1/8 or close to it, and this is a 1 7/8 inch. So you want to tighten that down. Got both sides done here. This I didn't really like, but it is what it is. It only comes about halfway through the threads because of the bracket being so thick. So, but it says to reuse it. So, okay, it does say the following step is just to place your skid plate for the transfer case on. Pretty self-explanatory. What's up, guys? Sorry, it's a bit mess in the shop right now. So I'm back. It's been a few days. So I'm actually in law enforcement. So my main job currently is law enforcement. So let's show you where we're at. So right where we left off, I got the lower and upper control arms in. They're all set to their length. Everything's tight. My new carrier bearings and pinion bearing should be in this morning about 7:30. So that's where we're currently at. So we're going to continue on by adding I believe we're going to remove the old track bar bracket here, and we have a new extended track bar bracket. So we'll go ahead and start that and continue on with our video. All right, so here's the track bar extension. You're gonna reuse your factory bolts. Real simple. 2 bolts here, 2 bolts on the bottom side. So we're gonna move on to doing the before we put the track bar in, because I don't want anything interfering with working on my front diff. I'm gonna go ahead and move over to the sway bar in links. We're gonna go ahead and remove these old links because we have new ones that are extended. Then we're gonna set up a mounting plate for them. All right, I got the front end back together. All new bearings in, axles are back in. So going back to the sway bar in links, we're gonna install this comes in the kit, but install this on the bottom side of the sway bar, both sides. And then also, just for information, I have not got this far in the instructions. It doesn't say anywhere in the instructions that I need an extended pitman arm or extended brake lines, but I am currently barely hanging this thing past stock, and this brake line's pulling pretty tight. So there may be a possibility that extended brake lines might have to be done prior to driving this thing, but we'll see what kind of brackets and stuff they have, and I'll keep you guys posted on that. All right, so go ahead and get your tie rod ends on here. You're gonna leave these loose because you're gonna need to adjust them once the vehicle's down on the ground. The instructions don't say that, but you never should adjust a sway bar up in the air and guesstimate. So we'll do that last, and then we'll have to add those sway bar mounts for this to come up out of the way. So there's a special mount kit, so when you want extra articulation, you can move these out of the way. But we want to make sure this is the right length before we add that bracket. So we'll finish the front end, get the springs and stuff up, and then go from there. All right, next you're gonna drill, I already got mine done, the top of the spring perch, 11 30-seconds hole on both sides. That is gonna be for the new bump stop spacers, which are these bad boys right here. Okay, make sure your spring sits in its proper perch. This is going to be your spacer. Make sure your springs are articulated. Go ahead and get them in. I had to take my brakes back off to lower the axle enough to get the springs in without having to use a spring compressor. Alright, so again, these instructions aren't the best. So what I ended up doing is I found a different set of instructions for the track bar, but they don't have a measurement. So I set it at the 31 7/8, but what I ended up doing is I ended up loosening it here, getting both bolts to start, and then tightening this down and measuring it while it's on the vehicle, center to center, 31 7/8, and then when I get it all on the ground, I'll verify that the axle is actually sitting under the vehicle properly once it's on its own weight. So now I believe we are moving on to some brackets, and I got to put my tie rods back on because I bought that separate. So all right, so I went ahead and threw in my shock absorbers. You're going to retain your factory hardware for the lower bolts, and then I put there's two different rubber pieces. I put the flat rubber on the bottom and the rubber that's got the little lip on top, so that way I could center the shock from the top when I go to the top to tighten those down. So and then I threw the stickers on, so it's coming together. All right, I got it down on jack stands. I got these adjusted. I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of adjustment here, so I did extend the sway bar. Normally it's supposed to be at a perfect 90, however, because this does have more travel, I give it a little bit of angle so I could have some adjustment, because otherwise the tie rod was, or sorry, the sway bar end link was going to be maxed out. As you can see, they're different. This one's got plenty of threads here, so, and yeah, it's looking good. I got all my, this is separate of what you guys are doing, but all my new tie rods in. I just gotta check clearance, so make sure nothing rubs. So all right, there is your tie rod bracket. Up there you would put the pin in it. However, I'm going to have mine connected, so I'm not going to put the pin in it, but that's how you mount a tie rod bracket. So if you need the articulation while you're out on a trail, you can disconnect it, set it up there, it'll be out of your way. All right, we are completely back together with the front, so don't forget to tighten your front shock up top. What I ended up doing here was flipping the ABS line so it didn't make a U. That gave me plenty of extra slack back here. Make sure you put on your ABS bracket back behind the shock again, route your wire down through. Got my brakes back on. For me, I added all this extra heavy duty steering, good steering dampener. I had to adjust all that. So now it's on to the back. All right, you're gonna support your rear end. Very first thing, step one, is to remove on the passenger side T55 an 18mm bolt to the track bar. All right, track bar is removed from passenger side. It does say the next step is to loosen the axle side. However, for me, it is in the way of my gas tank shield. So what I'm going to end up doing is moving on to the next step, removing the rear shocks. Then I'm going to lower the diff down a little bit so I can get a socket on that bolt without having to pull all this extra stuff off. Okay, shocks are out. As you can see, it worked perfectly. I was able to drop this down enough. Just go ahead and get my socket right on here. Got the track bar loose, like they said. The next following step is going to be the sway bar links right here, the mounts. We're going to take the sway bar loose and let it hang. Okay, so the following step was to remove the sway bar end links from the axle side. So according to this particular kit, the rear sway bar is not used at all. So we'll be taking the sway bar completely out. Okay, next step was to remove your lower coil spring retainer on both sides, lower the axle down, and then go ahead and remove your springs. Springs are there on the ground. All right, our next step is to remove the lower control arm on each side. We'll get those out, and then we will need to take the brake line bracket off of the upper control arm on the driver's side. All right, lower control arms are removed, both sides. Got the brake line removed, got the brake line clip removed. It says to remove the clip. Got the emergency brake bracket here, and brake line removed from the upper control arm on both sides. So now we're going to remove the upper control arms. Okay, so we have upper and lower control arms in. Make sure you secure your drive line or your axle. For me, I have the means to strap it to my jack and then adjust it as I see accordingly. I can tilt it forward, back, whichever way I need to with this. So the next step is to cut off the lower control arm mounts on both sides. So we're gonna go ahead and get started on that. It'll be the same way we cut off the fronts, ensuring we don't cut into the factory frame. And here we go. Okay, both brackets are cut. The next thing on this kit is to cut the upper control arms with a Sawzall. Upper control arm brackets on both sides. That one here. That one here. I'm just going to cut it and continue to follow it until it cuts the bracket all the way off. Alright, the upper control arm brackets are cut off and painted. I did have to lower the heat shield to gain access to make it a little easier. I'm going to set up the brackets so your bracketed nuts or lag nuts here, your long one's going to go towards the back, short one's going to go towards the front, second hole on both sides. I'm going to start putting in the rear bracket. Alright, brackets are in. Let me tell you, definitely a pain in the ass. What I ended up doing is the crush sleeves were wider than my frame. I ended up grounding them flush, cutting a V channel, and just tack welding them in. But here they are. Go ahead and install your upper control arms. If you look here, this is passenger side. You want it to taper towards the center like a V. So they do have a slight bend. It's going to be the straight one. You're going to reuse your stock mounting bolts there, supplied bolts here. Now we're going to do self-explanatory, the lower control arms. Lower control arms are in. Factory hardware again. Here I have them loose so I can tighten them once it sets down on the suspension. Brake line bracket. Brake line bracket. I ended up drilling this hole bigger for the factory sway bar bolt. You'll need to bend your brake line very gently, easily over to here. There is this extra bracket that goes to nothing, and then that is your other bracket. And you will disconnect these from the old bracket there so they can stretch. All right, there's some supplied zip ties. You zip tie that up to the metal line there. Unclip all your ABS. It does require you to run this ABS. I had to unbolt it from the rear axle, bring it around, go over and around the rear track bar. So I want you to have it go around the rear track bar. Then you're gonna install your track bar mounting bracket. Through here, you're gonna have a crush sleeve in here. And, all right, so track bar, you're gonna retain your factory bolt. It does say earlier on in the instructions, it says to just loosen this one, but then now it says you can install this one once the suspension's done on the ground. So I'd get it up there started first. Then you're gonna remove your bump stops. These rubbers just pry out of there, and there's two 13mm underneath that, and then you put the extenders on. They need to angle back towards the axle's new location. Okay, after the track bar's in, what you're gonna do is you can go ahead and put in your coil springs. Don't forget your coil retainer. See if I can come to the other side for you guys. You should have held on to your coil retainer here. And then you can also put in your shocks. The picture instructions from Rough Country say to install the shocks as shown. They have the shock shaft going downwards. However, the shocks themselves, see if you can see it here, it says top and points up. So I'm going to go with the recommended direction of these shocks here. Maybe Rough Country has a reason they flipped them upside down. However, for me, I'm going to go with what the shock itself says. And then after that, make sure you got your lower control arms in. Sorry, pause there for a second. On both sides, everything is loose. So now I'm going to go through and tighten all the rear suspension with it settled on the ground. And then the lift kit itself is done. I got a few more things on mine that I'm doing, but other than that, you guys are set. Oh, I would recommend, just for recommendation, I did end up ordering a 4-inch drop lift or drop pitman arm and extended brake lines. These brake lines, while they have you flip them and run them, right now this is at full sag and this line's pretty tight. It's not like braking tight, but it's pretty damn tight. And the front ones, same thing. They're pretty tight. So I went ahead and got extended brake lines, so I'm gonna have to do all that. But there you guys go. We'll get it all done. We'll get it settled to the ground, get some good pictures of it and reviews of how it drives afterwards. So I would definitely recommend getting the 4 to 6 inch drop pitman arm. See if you can see mine in here. It really keeps the stock geometry of the tie rods. So really nice fitment. I got that from Summit Racing, and it runs really nice. I got an appointment on Friday to get it aligned. Got the bushwhacker fenders in this weekend as well.